History doesn't repeat, but financial patterns do. And today, we stand at the edge of a turning point the entertainment world has not seen in 100 years. A turning point where streaming giants devour century-old studios, where debt dictates the fate of entire industries, and where the world suddenly realizes that Hollywood's golden age wasn't killed by audiences or declining creativity. It was killed by math. Warner Brothers' Discovery, the birthplace of iconic cinema, is drowning under a debt load so heavy that no amount of creativity can save it. Paramount is collapsing even faster. Disney is bleeding cash, and the streaming bubble, once believed to be the future of global entertainment, has burst with a violence that few predicted. Amid this chaos stands Netflix, the only streaming platform consistently generating real profit, the only one still growing, and the only one with a business model designed to survive the collapse of traditional Hollywood. People online keep asking, did Netflix buy? Warner Bros. Is the deal official? Is Hollywood finished? The truth is more complicated, but also much more revealing. Because while the rumors are not confirmed, the financial forces behind them are real, unstoppable, and already reshaping the industry. This is the full story, the economics, the strategy, the collapse, the opportunity, behind what may become the biggest acquisition in entertainment history. Let's begin. To understand why Warner Brothers may be forced into a sale, you must start with the debt, because debt is the silent killer of empires. When Discovery merged with Warner Media in 2022, the newly created Warner Brothers Discovery inherited more than $45 billion of debt. This wasn't just a heavy burden, it was a death sentence. 1. Warner Bros. Pays billions in interest every year before the company funds a single film, a single HBO series, a single marketing campaign, or a single new streaming feature. It must pay billions in interest to lenders. This drains oxygen from the entire organization. No innovation, no long-term planning, no strategic investment, no financial flexibility, just survival. 2. HBO Max wasn't the savior they hoped for. For decades, HBO was the gold standard of prestige television. But in the modern streaming economy, prestige doesn't equal profit. A blockbuster HBO season can cost $150 million to $300 million. Meanwhile, Netflix can dominate global watch time with a $20 million Korean thriller, a teen romance, or a reality show. Warner invested in art. Netflix invested in volume and algorithms. One of them won. 3. The legal trap. Warner Bros. Cannot sell itself until 2026. Here's the part almost nobody understands. Because of the reverse Morris Trust structure used in the merger, Warner Bros. Discovery is legally prohibited from being sold, broken apart, or merged until the third quarter of 2026. This means even if a buyer wants it, even if the company collapses, even if the board approves, they can't sell. Not yet. Warner Brothers is an empire with no exits, a sinking ship with all the lifeboats locked, and when the lock finally opens in 2026, Hollywood will explode. Even though there is no confirmed acquisition, Netflix remains the most strategically aligned candidate. Why? Because Netflix's weaknesses perfectly match Warner Bros.' strengths, and Netflix's strengths perfectly solve Warner Bros.' weaknesses. 1. Netflix has a content gap. Netflix has volume, but it does not have franchises. No Harry Potter, no DC Universe, no classic animation library, no multi-decade evergreen IP. Warner Bros. Does. For Netflix, Warner Bros. Is not a studio, it is a permanent supply of cultural capital. 2. Netflix profits while everyone else loses. In 2024, Netflix earned over $10 billion in profit. Disney lost billions. Paramount was close to bankruptcy. HBO Max remained unprofitable. Netflix is the only streaming company that mastered the financial model, and that makes it uniquely capable of absorbing Warner's debt. 3. Netflix grows through debt successfully. Warner's debt is a threat, but Netflix's debt is a tool. Netflix borrows money, produces content, gains subscribers, pays debt, borrows again. Traditional studios collapse under debt. Netflix thrives on it. 4. Netflix needs long-term IP to survive AI disruption. As AI-generated entertainment expands, original content becomes cheaper to produce and less competitive. The only durable moat is franchise IP Batman, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, The Matrix, Looney Tunes, Cartoon Network, WWB Games, Mortal Kombat, Batman Arkham, etc. These properties cannot be replaced by AI. Netflix knows this, and Wall Street knows Netflix knows this. What most people don't understand about the current Hollywood collapse is that this is not merely a creative crisis or a streaming war. It is a capital structure failure. If you want to understand why studios are falling one by one, you must understand the mathematics behind how a modern entertainment company survives, and those numbers reveal a pattern that even Hollywood insiders refuse to talk about publicly. For almost a century, studios operated using what analysts call the waterfall model. A film would make money through several sequential windows: theatrical release, international distribution, airline licensing, DVD sales, cable syndication, and eventually digital rental. Each window produced new revenue. Each window monetized the same content again and again. A single hit could sustain a studio for years. Streaming destroyed that waterfall completely. Under streaming economics, a film or series earns money only once, through subscriber retention. Not ticket sales, not licensing, not broadcast rights. Just retention. And retention is brutally difficult to measure and dangerously easy to miscalculate. This is the financial root of Hollywood's crisis. If a film costs $200 million to produce and market, the studio must determine whether that film helps retain or acquire enough subscribers to justify its existence. But subscriber revenue is shared across the entire library. There is no precise attribution. That uncertainty, multiplied across hundreds of titles, has created an unsustainable financial environment. Netflix can survive this environment because it designed itself around it. Its debt structure, its algorithmic decision-making, and its global licensing machine were built for perpetual content volume. But studios like Warner Bros., Paramount, and even Disney were never designed for a world where the value of a film collapses to near zero on day one. If Warner Bros. Is sold, it won't be because of creative failure. It will be because the studio's capital structure is incompatible with the modern economy of streaming attention. And here is the part that almost no one sees. Warner Bros.' debt is not simply a large number. It is compounding. Every quarter, as interest accumulates and cash flow tightens, the company's borrowing costs increase. To service that debt, the studio must produce fewer films, cancel more projects, and aggressively cut spending. This shrinks output, which reduces revenue, which makes the debt even harder to pay. This is what economists call a negative operational flywheel, a cycle that accelerates collapse rather than growth. Netflix, by contrast, operates on a positive operational flywheel. Borrow cheaply, produce global content, acquire subscribers, generate recurring revenue, borrow again at scale. Warner cannot spin its flywheel anymore. It's frozen in place, and every month that passes before 2026 pushes the studio deeper into a zone of forced restructuring. This is why the bidding war around Warner is so intense. It is not about prestige history or Hollywood pride. It is about intellectual property. As collateral, DC, Harry Potter, Looney Tunes, Middle-earth, and the Warner Film Archive are not cultural artifacts. They are financial assets used to secure loans, attract equity, and justify valuations. To Netflix, owning Warner Bros. IP is not simply a content strategy. It is a balance sheet strategy. IP stabilizes investor confidence, IP reduces subscriber churn, IP strengthens long-term cash flow projections, and perhaps most importantly, IP provides something that algorithms cannot manufacture: Cultural permanence. Meanwhile, technology giants like Amazon and Apple see something even bigger. They see Warner Bros. Not as a studio but as a gateway into global distribution power. Whoever controls Warner's library controls decades of cultural capital. Whoever controls its franchises controls licensing pathways across toys, gaming, merchandise, theme parks, and international markets. This is why Apple and Amazon are feared bidders. They do not buy studios for survival. They buy them for ecosystem dominance. If either company acquires Warner Bros. In 2026, Netflix will lose its only chance to obtain the long-term intellectual property needed to secure its future. And for Netflix, that would be an existential blow. This is the financial truth behind the acquisition rumors. It is not about headlines. It is not about hype. It is about mathematical inevitabilities. Warner Bros. Cannot survive without restructuring. Paramount cannot survive without consolidation. Disney cannot survive without radical cost reduction. And Netflix cannot dominate without IP. In the end, every major player in the market is being pushed into the same battlefield, not by strategy, not by desire, but by the unforgiving logic of modern finance. History doesn't repeat, but financial patterns do, and Hollywood is following the same pattern every collapsing empire has followed for centuries. People keep repeating the idea that Netflix already bought Warner, but that's obviously not true. What's even more incorrect is the assumption that Netflix is the only one chasing the company. Behind the scenes, something much bigger is forming a fight worth more money than most industries will ever see. Paramount, the studio running out of time. Paramount is hanging by a thread. Everyone in the business knows it, but private equity groups and Middle Eastern investment funds are quietly preparing to throw money at them so they can try something bold in 2026, a direct attempt to take over Warner Bros. It sounds insane, but when a company is drowning, it sometimes tries to swallow a bigger one just to stay alive. Disney, the buyer that isn't allowed to buy. Disney would absolutely love to get Warner Bros., and they would outspend every rival without blinking. But regulators, they would block it instantly. Disney is already too big. This is the same company that paid $72 billion for Fox. They'd drop $100 billion on Warner Bros. Without hesitating if the law allowed it. Amazon, the quiet threat. Amazon doesn't rely on movies to turn a profit. Their real money comes from Prime subscribers, and TV shows are just bait to keep people inside the Amazon ecosystem. If Amazon wakes up tomorrow and decides to buy Warner Bros., they can pay cash on the spot. Apple, the one that ends the game immediately. If there's one company nobody can outbid, it's Apple. If Apple enters the fight, the war is already finished. Their pockets are deeper than every entertainment company combined. And this, right here, is what scares Netflix. Not that Warner Bros. Might vanish, but that someone far richer might grab it first. Section 4. What happens if Warner Bros. Is sold? No matter who ends up taking control of Warner Bros., Netflix, Amazon, Apple, or even Paramount, Hollywood will never look the same again. 1. Entertainment becomes a world of a few giants. Instead of dozens of studios fighting for space, everything shrinks into a handful of empires: Disney, Netflix, Amazon, Apple, if they decide to join. Independent studios, they basically disappear. 2. Movie theaters take another hit. Warner Bros. Has always been theater-friendly. Netflix is not. If Netflix becomes the owner, expect short theatrical runs, more straight-to-streaming releases, only massive franchises hitting cinemas, mid-budget films, they'll vanish. 3. HBO gets pushed to a breaking point. HBO is built on quality. Netflix thrives on quantity. Those two philosophies don't mix. Under one roof, one has to give up something, and everyone knows which one usually gets cut first. 4. WB Games turns into the biggest weapon in the room. People forget how huge WB Games really is. They control Rocksteady, NetherRealm, Monolith, TT Games, Avalanche. These studios hold legendary franchises. Whoever owns them gains power across film, TV, and gaming. Netflix would use them for subscription gaming, Amazon for cloud expansion, Apple for hardware dominance. This is why every tech company is circling like a hawk. Everything leads to one moment, Q3 2026. That's when Warner Bros. Finally becomes legally free to sell itself, merge, or split apart. And when that happens, buyers storm in, banks push for a breakup, regulators jump in, executives panic, stock prices explode in every direction. Hollywood has never been this vulnerable. Disney is bleeding cash. Paramount is falling apart. Warner Bros. Is suffocating under debt. Amazon and Apple are waiting. Netflix is quietly getting stronger. The Hollywood we grew up with is already gone, and whatever comes next hasn't fully taken shape yet. But one thing is clear. Whoever owns Warner Bros. Will control the next era of global entertainment. When 2026 finally arrives and the walls around Warner Bros. Come down, the sale itself will only be the beginning. What follows afterward is the part nobody is really ready for, the chain reaction that keeps spreading long after the headlines disappear. Because once a giant falls, the ground doesn't just shake under that one company. Everything connected to it starts cracking. Studios, talent agencies, streaming platforms, advertisers, gaming divisions, even theme park operators, they all feel the impact. And honestly, the entertainment business hasn't seen a real aftershock period like this since the fall of MGM or the collapse of the DVD market. Here's what comes next. 1. Hollywood's middle class disappears. There used to be a space in the industry for projects that weren't blockbusters but weren't tiny either. Thrillers, mid-budget dramas, grounded sci-fi, character films. That category kept thousands of writers, directors, and crews working, but once giant corporations take control, everything becomes binary. Either it's a franchise, or it doesn't get made. Studios will chase global hits because global hits justify global debt. Everything else gets squeezed out quietly. Actors and creators lose negotiation power. For years, top talent could play studios against each other. HBO versus Netflix, Disney versus Warner, Amazon versus Apple. But when the number of studios shrinks, competition shrinks too, and when competition shrinks, salaries drop, back-end deals vanish, creative control disappears, exclusivity contracts grow. This isn't personal, it's math again. When fewer buyers exist, buyers decide the rules. 3. Algorithms start choosing what gets made. People think algorithms are just recommendation systems, but in streaming, they quietly became the main decision makers. Executives no longer ask, "Is this a good film?" They ask, "Does this reduce churn in week 3?" And when a company owns giant IP libraries, the algorithm becomes even more aggressive because it knows franchise content always beats original statistically. So, the industry shifts from what story is worth telling to what story keeps people subscribed, not better, not worse, just the new reality. 4. Gaming becomes the real prize. Hollywood keeps pretending movies are the center of culture, but the truth is hard to ignore. Gaming makes more money than film, plus music, plus streaming combined. Warner Bros. Knows this, Netflix knows this, Amazon knows this. That's why WB Games is treated like the crown jewel in every acquisition rumor. After 2026, whichever company takes control of Warner will likely pour more money into gaming than movies. Not because they love games, but because gaming creates stable, long-term cash flow. A hit game can earn money for 10 years. A movie earns money for one weekend. 5. Global markets reshape storytelling. A huge shift is coming. The next era of entertainment will be shaped more by Brazil, India, Korea, Saudi Arabia, and Indonesia than by California. Why? Because that's where the growth is. Warner Bros., under new ownership, won't just be thinking about American audiences. They'll build stories that work worldwide, characters who don't need translation, genres that travel easily, visuals that reach everyone. Netflix already does this, Amazon is catching up, Apple is watching silently. Hollywood becomes global, not by choice, but because the numbers force it. 6. the emotional impact. Audiences feel the change last. The funny thing is, the audience won't feel the shift immediately. For a while, Batman movies still come out. Harry Potter still appears, HBO still releases prestige shows, Netflix still drops viral hits, but underneath all of that, the foundation changes, budgets shift, priorities shift, leadership shifts, and then one day, maybe in 2027, maybe 2028, people look around and say, why does everything feel different now? Because the choices that shaped those stories were made years earlier, in boardrooms debating debt, subscriber retention, and intellectual property value. The creative decisions simply followed the financial ones. If there's one thing history keeps showing us, it's that collapses don't happen in a single moment. They happen slowly, quietly, and then suddenly all at once. Hollywood's old machine is running out of fuel. The companies replacing it are powered by data, debt, global markets, and intellectual property. And when Warner Bros., one of the oldest studios in the world, finally changes hands, that will be the signal that the old world is gone for good. The next era won't be defined by who tells the best stories, but by who owns the stories everyone wants. And right now, the battle for those stories hasn't even reached its loudest moment. 2026 is just the opening bell. History doesn't repeat, but these financial patterns never really go away. Empires rise, empires collapse, and they rarely fall because of creativity or talent. They fall because of debt. Overspending, market shifts, refusing to adapt. Hollywood is now facing all four at the same time. Warner Bros. Is running out of air, Paramount is barely hanging on, Disney can't keep burning money forever, and Netflix, built on debt, algorithms, and global reach, is getting stronger while everyone else weakens. The next 2 years will completely reshape movies, TV, gaming, and the way stories spread across the world. And, when everything settles, people will finally see the truth. This was never really about streaming. It was about who gets to shape culture. The collapse is coming. The math already shows it, and the same financial patterns that ended past empires are now standing at Hollywood's door.